How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael S.K., and welcome back to Chaos Head Noah. The last couple of episodes have been very, well, I can't say chaotic, I can't say crazy. Everything has been super confusing since the get-go. I really don't know how to describe the last couple or so episodes, but if anything, we are starting to get dots that are sort of connecting themselves to each other. We're getting a little bit of information instead of just growing constantly in questions. I mean, there's still questions that are popping up here and there. I don't think we've necessarily gotten any answers, but we are actually seeing progress in a way, where before I would argue that we really haven't. So, in the last episode, Suwa is apparently kidnapped, or has been kidnapped, apparently in a similar vein, possibly to Nanami, where Rimi is going to go off and try to save her for the real Takumi's sake. Or at least that's my prediction. Or at least that's what everything's been hinting towards. Now, the Takumi that we've been following since the get-go, who is apparently a delusional existence, is suicidal, understandably so. He doesn't know what the hell he wants to do anymore. And now we're here, because he couldn't kill himself. He doesn't know what to do, to be completely honest. Having lost all of my willpower before I realized it, I found myself back in my base. I didn't know how I'd gotten here after failing to die at Yamanone Dore. My memory was hazy. It was something I'd never even thought about until now, but now that I couldn't help but notice how odd it felt. The more I thought about it, the more the feeling encroached upon my mind. The moment I closed the door, the room went pitch black. Leaning against the door, I simply stood there, still as could be. Inside the quiet room, all that could be heard was the sound of my shallow breathing, and the hum of the fan inside my PC. I thought that maybe surrounding myself in darkness would make things easier, since I wouldn't have to be conscious of my pitiful self, but it had the exact opposite effect. Unable to see anything, and with nothing else to listen to, Rimi's cruel words from before repeated endlessly in my mind.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
My own moans disgusted me more than ever before. I even felt nauseous. I was already a disgusting freak, even before all of this, but if my very existence itself was warped, I was already beyond saving. I wanted to disappear completely. As I tripped over the trash scattered across the floor, I stumbled my way to the end of the room. I turned the lights on, scaring away the dark. I then grabbed the Seraton figure, post-awakening version, thank you for the clarification game, that just so happened to enter my line of sight and sat down in my chair. I brought her close to my chest. She was really small, and she was really hard too. She didn't breathe, nor did she speak. She didn't have the warmth that a 3D girl had. Oh, what will we do here? Despite that, she was all I had left. Rimi had left me. I didn't know where Nanami was. Let's do a good delusion here. I know we shouldn't be having delusions, but you know, here we are. Senna had attacked me. Kozupi hadn't protected me. Yua was my enemy. And Ayase was hospitalized. These were the only girls I knew the names of, and none of them would do anything for me. Reality was harsh. It didn't give a damn about a monster like me. With my trembling hands, I tightened my grip on Seraton, tighter, tight enough to break her. I wanted to disappear completely. Are we gonna have a delusion?
消えなくたってこれまでタッキーは存在感ゼロだったっしょ。
I think I got my answer. I felt a sudden pain deep in my chest. To think even Seraton would say such horrible things to me.
ひどいことも何も本当のことだよ。消えたいとか言ってるくせに図星疲れたぐらいでへこむんだ。タッキーはさ、この1ヶ月ぐらい調子に乗ってたよね。周りの人たち、特に女子だよね。可愛い子たちとリア充みたく話すようになっちゃって。それまではさ、友達なんて一人もいなくて引きこもってたのに。 でも逆に考えればまたその頃みたいな生活に戻るってだけなんさ。
Go back?
そう戻る。誰とも会っちゃダメ、誰も信じちゃダメ。本物なのか偽物なのかとかどうでもいい。そんなの誰にも証明できないし、タッキーは私だけ見てればいいんさ。前はそれだけで十分幸せだったっしょ。そう感じなくなっちゃったのはタッキーに近づいてきたあの女子たちのせいだよ。あんなアバズレビッチどもとはさ、会わない方がいいって絶対。
Yeah, you said it.
そうか、そういうことか。
The ones who'd gotten involved with me were at fault. It was their fault, Rimi's and everyone else's, not mine. I'd become a shut-in again. Starting with Seraton, I'd live here surrounded by my waifus as a person with no name, an anonymous existence. Sounds good to me. What about you, Seraton?
そういうこと。
Uh-huh. Well, if anything, this is quite literally taking Rimi's advice. Don't seek out the truth, don't get the answers you want, instead just stay here. And now he's actually doing that.
私が幸せにしてあげる。
Seraton spoke cheerfully from within my grasp, and I was hit with a strong sense of disgust toward myself, who had made her do so. I'm such a fucking disgrace. I wanted to die even more than before. Not gonna work out, huh? Human presence quickly faded from the hospital cloaked in night. Perhaps after taking in all the life and death during the day, it took this time to regain balance. At this time, the hospital housed neither the scent of life nor the scent of death. Only a quiet emptiness reigned. Ban Yasuji chuckled to himself as he realized the odd nature of his thoughts. Despite the miner's self-flagellation, let's go with that, it did indeed feel especially quiet tonight. It was not yet time for the lights to be on, leaving the corridors steeped in darkness. There was not even a single sign of any nurses. Immediately after stepping foot into the lobby, Bond was hit with a very bad feeling. There was no logical reasoning behind it. It was simply what one might call a detective's gut. My gut is usually right for the most part. In his mind, he believed it to be an oddly superstitious thought, but this may have simply been a way to dismiss the feeling. While the taxi had driven him to the hospital, Bond had attempted to call Sua's phone numerous times, but each and every one of them had failed, which only served to demonstrate his junior's precarious situation all the more clearly. There was no time to waste. He had to find the place where Sua was being held within the large hospital and rescue him, all while not being detected by the kidnapper. Oh, I'm sure they already know that he's here. I knew from the get-go that this hospital could not be trusted. The floor would have made his footsteps echo, and to avoid this, Bond took off his shoes before entering the lobby. See, instead of trying to stumble over trying to how to pronounce that, I'm just not even going to bother. Winter was swiftly approaching at this time of the year, a fact Bond was readily made aware of when the chill from the floor sent shivers up his soles. What the fuck? The sound of the automatic front door echoed throughout the room, followed by the voice of a girl calling out Bond's name. Oh. The surprise of seeing her in the lobby put Bond at a loss for words. He hurried toward her in a panic. Beyond her glasses, her eyes threw anxious glances at her surroundings.
おい、なんでついてきたんだ。身を隠せって言っただろうね。
Yeah, I'm not really sure what her plan here is. I don't even know what his is.
でも私
Bond looked for any signs of Momose, but she was nowhere to be seen. Realizing she had come alone, Bond scratched the top of his head with a concerned expression.
今すぐ戻れ。これは遊びじゃねえんだぞ。
それは分かっているつもりです。
分かってるなら帰るんだ。
Oh no. Right as he spoke, a creaking sound came from the hallway across the lobby. In the very center of this empty, dark hallway, Slowly, an empty wheelchair made its way toward Bon and Yua. Then, at nearly the same exact time, someone could be heard running up the stairs.
とにかくユアちゃんは帰れ。いいな。
Yeah, there's some scary shit happening here. Before he had even finished giving his warning, Bon had already started running. He followed the footsteps up the stairs without waiting for Yua's answer. Given his typically languid demeanor, the speed at which Bon moved was like nothing anyone could have ever imagined. She's not going to leave, is she? She's going to follow. As he followed the footsteps, Bon found himself on the roof of the outpatient ward. There were lines of shrubbery installed on the rooftop, forming a garden of sorts. It was most likely a space of healing for the patients there, but regrettably, as the lights were off, Bon could not see what kind of flowers were blooming there. How unfortunate. Given the fact Bon was on the roof, it was only natural that the wind would blow strong. With ragged breaths, Bon quickly surveyed his surroundings. Without a shadow of a doubt, this is where the man behind the footsteps must have run, but now he was nowhere to be seen. Was I led here on purpose? The man had fled while causing sounds that had seemed purposeful. Bon could not think of any other reason for him to have done that, aside from leading him here. Bon did not have his gun on him. As he was apprehensive about being unarmed, he looked for something that could serve as a weapon, but to no avail. I mean, it is a hospital. I don't think they're going to leave shit out that, like, people could just start picking up and swinging around to cause more problems. With a gulp, he wiped away the sweat on his forehead with his fingers. Step by step, he made his way to the center of the garden. Here and there, Bon could see a few hiding spots tucked within the shadows of the benches and shrubbery. He put himself into a fully alert state, one in which he could respond to a potential attacker no matter the direction they came from. The garden was set up in a circular fashion, with benches placed around it in accordance with its shape. Bon strained his eyes as he looked at each bench in order, and on one of those benches his eyes landed upon a strange object. Keeping a close look on his surroundings, he slowly approached the bench. And as he got closer to it, its shape was made clear to him. Okay, we've seen that before. It was around the size of a soccer ball, round and dark. It was a severed human head. Bon, who had investigated countless murder cases involving dismemberment in the past, quickly recalled an image of a photo he had once seen. The bad feeling in his chest grew stronger and stronger. Recognizing the possibility of it being his junior's head, vengeful anger and furious rage toward the perpetrator bubbled up from within. Isn't that just the mask? There's not a head in it, is there? Bon gritted his teeth and drew even closer to the bench. The object did not move a single inch. The wind of the night continued to blow. Then, Bon heard a gunshot. He froze in response to the sudden sound. Normally, the detective would duck and investigate the direction the sound had come from, but he was unable to do even that. No. In actuality, there was no need for him to do that anymore. Feeling a burning heat in his chest, Bon touched it with his hand. A slippery sensation. Something was flowing out from his body, accompanied by the very peculiar smell of blood, or particular. Only a short moment following the gunshot did Bon's mind begin to register pain within him. He had been shot, but by who? Was it Sua? I'm still a little suspicious about him. The moment he realized this, all strength left his legs. Come on, show us the shooter at least. He has to be there somewhere. Unable to remain standing, he collapsed to the ground. We're not going to get anything. Yep. I fucking knew it. Guys. You all owe me like $20. The footsteps from earlier were approaching him. As his vision grew blurry, he desperately looked up at the person drawing near. A dark shadow with a gun in its hand. A shadow so dark, Bon could not recognize its face. A voice came.
手を引けって言ったのに。
a voice he recognized.
残念っすよ、先輩。
Bon collapsed in a heap, was met with the ridicule of one man, Suwa Mamoru.
スワがお前が俺を
そうっす。いやー、祝初発砲ってところっすか？
As he laughed into the night, Suwa casually picked up the object from the bench.
ちなみに先輩、やけにこれに注目してたっすけど、そんなに珍しかったんすか？ダーススパイダーのヘルメット。
Suwa, who had now returned to Bon, held the dark helmet in front of the detective's face in an ostentatious manner. As Bon laughed, his vision grew blurrier and blurrier. Both his arms and legs felt extremely cold. His chest hurt, but not just from the physical pain. He also felt an intense gaze upon him, but he had no more strength to conclude whether it was Sua's or someone else's. Knowing that his life would last only a few more minutes, Bon forced his growingly heavy body to face upward. With arms and legs outstretched, only the night sky lay above him. A sky overcast with no stars to be seen. But even if there were any left in the sky, Bon had long since lost the ability to see them. After a few coughs, the taste of blood spread through his mouth.
お前はバカだ。まだガキでどうしようもないくらいのバカなデカだ。だが俺はお前のこと結構買ってた。
自分は先輩が鬱陶しくてしょうがなかったっすよ。
まあ気持ちはわかる。
Bon's breathing grew increasingly shallow. Only a faint wheezing sound could be heard leaking from his throat. Before long, he would be unable to perceive anything anymore.
何者なんだお前。
With his consciousness fading in and out, Bon spoke one final question. And in response, Suwa pointed the muzzle at Bon and then gave his reply.
魔法使いっす。
Huh?
バカが。
Unless... Before either of them could realize it, the wind had stopped blowing. The darkness had quickly turned to a place of serenity, and within it 2 figures remained frozen still. But that too remained only for an ephemeral moment. Sua's finger, now curled around the trigger, slowly moved inward.
先輩に信仰の救いあれ。
Methinks he was on the right track there. Huh. Well, this is a little strange. Okay, so I feel like I should explain why I feel like I was predicting, or how I came to predicting that Suwa... Oh, hey, look, Grim. How I kind of came to the conclusion, or started predicting Suwa was a little sus. Obviously, it was a little strange how, like, the two of them weren't working together anymore, but I guess they got split up for, I guess, Bon stepping out of his bounds or whatever. But Suwa doing what he was doing, we didn't really see much of him, and when we did, he did give a pretty big hint, bringing back that mask that we saw when Takumi was on top of the O-front. He was basically the only other person to bring up that Darth Vader reference or whatever. Like, or the Star Wars ripoff, or whatever you want to call it. He was the only one. And he seemed to be really pushy with his questions. You could argue, you know, he's the good cop or just playing the detective role or whatever, but he was a little odd. And he was the only one that brought up the deal regarding the Star Wars ripoff. So, I don't know. And with the lack of seeing him, it just, I don't know. I felt a little suspicious about him. This was not me thinking back on the anime and remembering something about him. I actually just straight up did not know if that was the actual truth. It looks like I was right. But why? Why is he working on the other side? Is it because, excuse me, is it because of the whole, like, political deal and the cops are also kind of sold out? Or what's happening there, you know? Also, what's happening here? Nope, we're just keeping at it. This is a lot of typing for nothing to show up on the screen here. Yeah, honestly. Still not really getting too far there. After all this time, only now you become Shuni. Or were you rejected by an IRL girl? In that case, I've got some good news for you. I don't think he's really in it for the good news. Doesn't really seem like it, at the very least. Nope, he's just continuing along. God damn it. If you stay a virgin till 30, come on. That was like the slowest part of the game. You become a wizard. What is this whole wizard shit? However, Suwa saying what he did makes me feel like he may be a gigalomaniac. It could be possible. Or he believes in this shit. That's a pro tip. I wonder who Grim is. Could Grim be just a figment of his imagination or something? I wonder. So speaking of pro tips, apparently there's going to be a festival in about an hour. What if this is Suwa? What if it is? No, it couldn't be. It'll be at Shibuya's Scramble Crossing. We're really getting far here. I'm like clicking a lot just to like move it along, and sometimes it just doesn't. Jesus, you're annoying. What the fuck? Well, if that's what you want, you should go. What kind of festival are we talking about? You're a celebrity, so you'll be the center of attention. I don't know if that's a good thing. Maybe you can get someone there to kill you? Turning off my PC monitor, I hug my knees with my arms.
Oni?
殺してよ。誰か。
Oni ってば。
In my hand was Seraton, my one and only ally. Yeah, why are we hearing Nanami?
当てろ。
I don't think we should be hearing Nanami. That couldn't be right. Perhaps because I'd been holding her in my sweaty hands for a while, her slender limbs were all sticky. And not only that, but her arms had been bent.
こら、当てろ。
No, let's not have a delusion here. That voice. It couldn't be. How?
バカ鬼。
There was no way I'd misheard that. Out of every girl that visited my base, there was only one dumbass that would scream outside of it like that. Nanami was here. I was somehow surprised at how indifferent I felt in response to that. I just didn't care. What would her coming here while I was this far gone even do for me? Besides, it wasn't like it was out of the ordinary for Nanami to come here. Hadn't Rimi said that she was going to rescue her anyway?
開けないとひどいんだからね。
The noise was starting to irritate me. Just leave a monster like me alone. Nanami should have been focused on her right hand, not me. Not that I knew what had happened to it. I didn't have it in me to talk to anyone anymore.
鬼。
Yeah, I don't want to choose a delusion here. Let's just see kind of what happens. But she was being too loud, so I was forced to get up from my chair and head for the door. The door seemed oh so far away from me, or far away to me, which made me realize I was scared to see her. Nah, but we gotta confront her, whoever this is, or however she's here, if this is her. The second I opened the door, Nanami shivered a little and then fell silent.
鬼
Even though she'd been shouting at the top of her lungs just a few moments ago, she was acting strangely meek now. I was confused. I'd barely ever seen Nanami act like this. So a thought crossed my mind. Was this Nanami real?
いるなら早く出てよ。入っていい？
I didn't answer. It's been a while since we've been in this weird 3D view. Ignoring her question, I headed back into my room and sat down on the sofa. I once again took hold of my Seraton figure and gripped her tight. So tight, in fact, that my hand hurt slightly. But it didn't matter, because that pain too was a delusion. Nanami followed after me, entering the room in silence. Once she came inside, as if she didn't know what to do at that point, she moved aside the magazines scattered across the floor and squatted down. She didn't speak, even though normally she'd have started scolding me the second she got the chance. She looked at a fixed point on the ground as she hugged her knees close. She had a depressed look on her face. A bandage was barely visible beneath the sleeve on her right wrist. I was about to say, if you sit like that, I'll see your panties, but stopped myself. This Nanami had to have been a delusion. I was one too, after all. Everything in this world was made up of delusions. Delusions developed only within my mind. Both me and this delusion I was looking at were fake. So if I saw her panties, or even if she walked around town buck naked, it made no difference to me whatsoever. So why is she here? What do we got going on? Averting my gaze from Nanami, I looked up at the ceiling. With no particular goal in mind, I started counting the rusty spots. I didn't want to look at Nanami. I'd only feel empty if I did. Silence took over. Only the sound of my fan and my PC could be heard throughout the cramped room. Even though every time Nanami came to my base, it turned into my own personal hell, one that was as annoying as could be. I still felt that way, but those memories too might have been delusions.
ねえ、鬼。何か喋ってよ。
A voice devoid of all energy. This couldn't be Nanami. Therefore, she must have been a delusion.
どうして何も言ってくんないの？包帯のこととか気になんないの？
I concentrated on my task of counting the rusty spots. I don't care, you're a delusion. Even if you were the real one, I'm completely unrelated to you. I'm a delusion, so I'm not related to you by blood.
何か言って。お願いだから。
The sound of rustling cloth rang throughout the quiet room, followed by a ringing in my ears. My head hurt. These two were delusions, though, so I paid them no mind. Whether Nanami was throwing off her clothes, taking off her bandage, or doing something unthinkable, it wouldn't surprise me. I didn't care. This was a delusion, and so was I. Even if there wasn't a concrete line of logic, it was the obvious conclusion to reach. And that was the end of that.
ほら、見てよ。
I wasn't going to look. I was too afraid.
青技、だいぶ消えてくれたな。最初はすごく腫れてたんだよ。バスケしてて、転んで打撲したんだ。見てもくれないの？ナナってお兄に心配されたこと一度もないな。逆はしょっちゅうなのに。
Oh, no. We definitely worried. I didn't want to see anything. I didn't want to think about anything.
Nanami.
Without meeting her eyes, I called out to my sister, or to the girl whose identity I wasn't sure of.
お前が本物でも偽物でもどっちでもいいよ。
Right now, I only wanted one thing.
僕を殺してくれないか。
Oh, come on, game. Please, just stay on one thing for like 5 minutes, dog. At the front entrance to AH Tokyo General Hospital, Kusunoki Yua fixed her gaze beyond the automatic door. Having been told by Bond to get out of here now, she reluctantly complied and went outside. However, in her worries, she could not bring herself to go any further. Bond had followed the mysterious figure and vanished up the hospital stairs. It had not even been 3 minutes since then, but hoping that Bond had already returned, Yua peeked into the lobby. This was after Bond had headed into the hospital alone. Yua had ignored Momose's orders and had followed after him, so she could get one step closer to the truth behind her little sister's death and the true perpetrator. The person that had told Bond to back off over the phone and had abducted Bond's junior, someone who must have been named Suwa-san, was most likely the same one that killed her sister Mia. That was the feeling Yua had, and as such, she had been unable to hold back her impulsive emotions. Despite Bond's various warnings about the dangers of involving herself with this case, Yua had come nonetheless. Moreover, it was not as though Yua would be able to achieve anything by coming here. She was nothing more than a powerless high schooler after all. Somewhere in her mind, Yua hoped that Bond would simply come running gallantly back after apprehending the culprit. If that happened, she would have the opportunity to question them directly. Why did my sister have to die? That was the one thing Yua had to ask. Suddenly, Yua felt a gaze upon her. She nervously scanned her surroundings. It had not even been 2 hours since the sun had set, yet oddly enough, the hospital's front entrance was eerily quiet. Right next to it was the urgent care entrance, which also served as the entrance for emergencies, and yet not even there housed any signs of human presence, which, in America, would be totally that would not happen. There would always be human presence. A train gently ran along its tracks behind the hospital. Hardly any cars passed by the large street in front of it, and there was nary a single passerby. Housed between the sleepless cities of Shibuya and Shinjuku, where Yua was now akin to an abyss of darkness formed in the interstice of two bursts of blinding light. No figure that could conceivably be responsible for the gaze was visible. Holding back her anxiety, Yua placed her hand over her chest and let out a small sigh. Following this, she found herself glancing over at the hospital ward. Okay. That kind of made my fucking heart drop for a moment there. Jesus Christ. I don't know, just wasn't expecting that. God damn. Alright, is that supposed to be her sister or something? Is she like having a delusion of her dead sister? There at the entrance to the hospital ward stood a single girl. The lights were out, rendering the area very dimly lit, and yet the girl's figure was clearly visible amid the darkness.
Mia-chan.
Without intending to, Yua whispered that name. Her sense of reason told her it was impossible, but nonetheless, she could not keep those words from escaping. The girl was a mirror image of her, a mirror image of her twin sister that was no longer of this world. Moreover, Yua recognized the clothes that she was wearing. She knew almost for a fact that they were her sister's clothes. Yeah, you see in visual novels and most anime, characters always wear the same outfit outside of their school uniform. It's basically a law. The possibility of her perhaps being a ghost filled Yua with fear. Fear that made her hair stand on end. Suddenly the girl turned and headed for the automatic door marking the entrance to the hospital ward. The moment she grew close enough, the door quietly slid open. It isn't a ghost. Yua was in shock, but before she could register anything more, she promptly ran after the girl and into the hospital ward. Well, it is pretty goddamn dark in here. Inside, perhaps due to it being past closing time, it was even quieter than outside. Each time Yua took a step forward, her footsteps echoed forth into the depths of the corridor. It had just been the same in the outpatient ward, but the fact that it was even quieter here made her very uneasy. The girl had disappeared up the stairs. Yua heard the faint sound of laughter coming from ahead. It's like a scene straight from a ghost story. This goddamn hospital, man. With that on her mind, Yua cautiously made her way up the stairs step by step. She arrived on the second floor. Glancing around the corridor, she did not see anyone, something she had expected. But just as she was suspecting that it may have been a mere illusion... Hey, we can stop playing this game altogether now, right? A girl's laughter sounded from the floor above. That voice and the sound of its laughter were identical to what Yua had heard time and time again in the past. So I think somebody's doing exactly the same thing that Rimi did to Senna, real booting a memory, if you will, or like a wish or something. So in this case, Yua's deep down wish must be to see her sister again, maybe. Not necessarily to find whoever the culprit is. Climbing to the third floor and looking down the corridor, Yua saw a girl with the same face as her, standing there. One of the victims of the first NewGen case, the group dive, her little sister, who should have died 2 months ago, Kusunoki Mia, was stood right there with an unmistakable sense of presence. See, it's easy to pull the twin sister move here in the game, especially if they are going to bring her character into the story, because then they could just reuse the sprite. They don't have to do really anything else. Yua removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. However, even after putting her glasses back on, she looked to see that Mia was still there.
Mia-chan, nano? Doumou?
A voice so clear it could never be an illusion. And that intrepid smile on her face, that laughter in the air. It was exactly the same as Yua remembered from her sister. Mia had always acted this very same way. In order for her to be the wrongdoer in the eyes of others, she had laughed like that all the time.
Mia-chan. 本当に私がミアであなたがユアだと思う？どういうこと？もし逆だったら、あなたはミア、死んだのはユア、殺したのはあなた。何を言っているの？あなたは親に愛される姉が疎ましくてネットで殺人を依頼したのよ。しかも自殺に見せかけるように見ず知らずの4人も一緒に飛び降りさせた。あなたは姉になりすまして妹の死を悲しみ、涙を流しているふりをしながら、これまで姉が独占していた親の愛を手に入れて、心の中ではほくそ笑んでいる。
That's more delusional than the shit Takumi pulls up.
違うわ。私はユアよ。誰がそれを証明するの？私はユアのはず。でも確信が持てない。私を私だと証明するものって何？顔？名前？記憶？自分のことなのに。自分で自分を証明するなんて不可能よ。私がミアだっていう可能性もあるの。あなたはいろいろと調べていたじゃない。多重人格、無遊病、記憶捏造、それから妄想。
The concepts Yua herself had been looking into prior to now showed just how real the ambiguity of memories or perhaps recollections truly was. She didn't know nor understand herself anymore. What was she? Yua cradled her head as she shook it in denial.
あなたは誰？
Was she Yua, who had always played the good child and was automatically loved and cherished by her parents? Was she Mia, who had always played the bad child and was actively hated by her parents, the child who, despite her actions being her own, oft cast her sister glares of jealousy and hatred?
さあ、私も。
Mia, or possibly Yua, guided Yua, or possibly Mia, god damn it, as she walked down the corridor soundlessly.
私と同じ目に遭いなさい。
Yua and Mia, identical twins, faces a mirror image of one another, and the boundary that served to differentiate the two was growing more and more blurred. I don't really know what to say here, but I think she's about to commit suicide. And I don't know what's pushing her to do that. It's some sort of delusion, it has to be, right? Two enormous boxes stood tall within the darkness, and yet compared to the nearby Shinjuku skyscrapers, they were akin to a small child looking up at their parents. The hospital roof, that was where Yua found herself, having been led there by Mia. A section of the towering fence had been torn open just wide enough to allow a person to fit through it. Whether this was an intentional effort, none could say. I would say. Mia and Yua, after moving through the torn section of the outer side of the fence, both now stood at the edge of the roof. Before them, the outpatient ward, as the location was lower than the hospital ward, the entire breadth of the roof garden was visible to them. However, the lights were still turned off, so even if there were people there, Yua would be unable to know. The wind blew strongly on the rooftop. The gale made Yua's and Mia's soft hair flutter, along with the hems of their clothes.
私たちはもともと一つだったんだから。
Oh yeah? I wonder about that.
また戻るだけ。一歩を踏み出せば、あなたは私になる。
Yua, her eyes vacant of all light, mechanically whispered those emotionless words. Spreading her arms to maintain her balance, she endured the upward rising wind. Beside her, Mia, arms spread just as Yua's were, looked at her sister and smiled.
耐える必要なんてないよ。
Oh, there's those lovely, like, reptilian eyes.
あなたは私の痛みを知らなくちゃならない。さあ、飛んで。そうすれば、私もあなたも同じ痛みを共有するわ。
Ah, yes. As God intended or whatever, right?
私はどっちなの？私？あなた？それを聞いても意味はないわ。どっちにしたって。私は飛ぶ。
All hesitation left within Yua disappeared, and so moving her foot forward, she... A gunshot tore through the dark night. And with a start, Yua came to her senses. I was wondering where the gunshot was going to come from. But damn, we got up here quick. Realizing where she was, she let out a frightful scream. The sheer height of where she stood immediately disoriented her, making her lose her balance. She very nearly fell, but in her desperation, she shot her hand toward the fence behind her and grabbed onto it. Because of this, she successfully managed to avoid being met with a terrible fate. The gunshot had come from the roof of the outpatient ward, leading her to look at it once more. In the circular clearing, on the roof garden, she managed to spot multiple figures. There were two of them. One was on the ground and the other stood beside them. Had the detective shot someone, or had the detective been shot by someone?
何をしてるの？どうして私と同じ痛みを味わおうとしないの？そんなの卑怯よ。ずるいわ。ミヤちゃん。違うわ。私はユアよ。ユアは私。ミヤはあなた。あなたは一体何なの？私はあなたの望んだもの。あなたは私の望んだもの。
Okay. Mia reached for her sister, placing her hands around Yua's neck. She began to strangle her, but this is basically verifying my prediction here. This is pretty much the same shit that Rimi did to Senna. Somebody is holding that wish, that deep down wish, and real booted it for her to see, to experience. Yua felt a strong pressure on her throat. She can no longer breathe. Mia was no ghost. She definitely had a body of flesh and blood, and now she was strangling Yua with it.
お願い、死んでよ。 うぐらい私のお願いを聞いて。いつも我慢してきたんだから。
Yua's vision grew crimson. She reached her hands out into the air in front of her, but found herself unable to grasp anything. I'm going to die. Awash with the most extreme dread, using her whole body, Yua called upon strength she did not even know she had as she tried desperately to break free from Mia's grasp. But Mia was too strong. Yua was unable to move her even a single inch. Even Yua's thoughts were dyed crimson. It felt as though her consciousness was being coated in a layer of vicious blood. In a desperate frenzy, she shook her head so violently, her glasses fell from her face, and from that point onward to an outside observer, Yua and Mia were no longer distinguishable. It did not matter who killed whom. The result was arbitrary. If Yua died, all Mia would have to do was become Yua. If Mia died, all Yua would have to do was become Mia. Feelings of resignation steadily spread throughout Yua's heart. Before her eyes was Mia's, or possibly Yua's face, seeping with anger. Not wanting to see such a sight, she looked away. And what vaulted into her red field of view was the shrubbery and the flowers adorning the roof garden. Oh, there we go. In her mind, Yua felt that there was a shadow among those flowers, the likes of which she had never seen before, though perhaps it was simply an illusion. She had dropped her glasses in the struggle after all. However, no longer able to breathe and suffering from so much pain, a faint sense of peace gradually rose from within her. Despite her thoughts of simply surrendering herself and peacefully passing on, her instinctive desire not to die denied her of that peace. It made Yua extend her hand toward the disparate shadow. Her distance from the shrubbery was about 2 meters. How she was now there was no way she would reach it, even if she, goddamn, I can't speak, even if she were to extend her hand. And yet, her fingertips touched something hard and cold. She then grasped it, almost completely unconsciously. The second she did so, Kusanoki's Yua's consciousness, right on the verge of fading, instantly became clear, as though the haze had been dispelled from her mind. Nobody's there. Unless, what the fuck is happening here, man? There was an invisible yet fierce impact. Her sister, rained upon by showering red lights akin to petals, was blown away. Languidly standing up as she gasped for air, Yua looked at what she was holding and instantly doubted her eyes. It was a sword. All too elegant like the glasses worn by one, all too sharp like the wit shown by the other. All too immaculate, all too vigorous. All too delicate, its frame easy to fracture, all too profound, its nature veiled. And so beautiful, it beckoned tears from all who laid eyes upon it, and so beautiful it beckoned tears from all who laid eyes upon it. I just read that. The object now in her hands, it reminded Yua of Ayase's sword that she had seen at the overpass, and of the sword that Bon had spoken of, Senna's. Well, she's still there. Mia, after being blown away by the mysterious impact, had been buried in the shrubbery, and she held her head, or as she held her head, she freed herself from it and crawled back to her feet.
何をしたの？私は、みえちゃん。私、やっとわかったわ。どうしてここまで一生懸命あなたの死の真相を調べていたのか。私を殺そうとしたの？私は、また殺されるところだったの？また？結局、私はあなたが怖かったのよ。当てつけに死なれたと思ったの。あなたがわからなかったの。あなたが死んだ理由は私のせいじゃないって証明して安心したかった。 最低のお姉ちゃんね。どうして死んでくれないのよ。
She could no longer get through to her. Their two selves, once together in the beginning, had now diverged completely, never to return to one again. Mia reached to grab her once more. Reminded of the pain that she had experienced before, Yua's trembles of dread returned, leading her to brandish her sword. It carved a sharp trail and then cut the ghost in half. Mia's movements came to a halt, and with a look of shock on her face, she traced the wound of gouged flesh with her hand, beginning from the left of her torso and ending all the way at her right shoulder. No blood sprang forth.
ミヤちゃんは2ヶ月前に死にました。それならあなたは誰なんですか？
Countless particles large enough to be seen by the naked eye came flowing out from within Mia. Her body, now enveloped in bubbles, gradually collapsed to the ground as her silhouette faded and faded. It was now transforming into something else. Yua, with feelings of incredulity, let's go with that, saw what it was. After a moment's wait, a man with an impressively large physique appeared in Mia's place. He was wearing a denim shirt, jeans, and a rucksack on his back. Yua had never seen the man before.
誰？あなた誰？
Is it Senna's father?
どうしてミヤちゃんの姿に？どうやって？
Yua backed away in confusion, still holding her D-sword. The man was similarly bewildered. He had likely not predicted that he would have been uncovered, leaving him to act in a very clearly frantic manner.
お前こそなんで
Oh shit, no, it's just some random fucker.
まさかこのガキギガロマニアックスか聞いてないぞくそどうしたら
And then, ignoring gravity itself, it came flying in, its path almost horizontal. By the time the man looked behind him, it had already perforated the rucksack on his back. And from that same rucksack, a pale flash of light surged. The man, as though he had just received an electric shock, stiffened up like a pole. His eyes shot open wide, and only a moment later he lost consciousness, falling face first to the ground. He foamed at the mouth, and every so often his body would twitch. The object that had pierced the rucksack, that's a D-sword I don't think we've seen before, was a sword quite like the one Yua had obtained just a moment ago, with beautiful curves adorning its every edge.
これ
Yua remembered the sword. She had seen it once before. A single presence approached her. Yua raised her head, unless it is Senna. Someone then emerged from the darkness.
何
No.
事かと思ったらこんな騒ぎになっていたのね。岸本さん。
Without a change in her expression, Ayase glanced at the sword Yua held in her hands.
感じる大いなる意志を。私がこの病院に居続けた意味はこういうことだったんだわ。
Yua had sunk into the ground, dumbfounded. Ayase picked up the glasses that had fallen near her, crouched down in front of Yua, and peered at the girl's face. Then, with her slender fingers, she brushed Yua's hair aside and gently put her glasses back in place.
君もグラジオールの黒騎士だったのね。
You can just fucking call her a gigalomaniac, man, come on. And with that, Ayase gave a faint, transient smile. Wow. All right.
僕を殺してくれないか。
This seems like a fantastic place to start the next episode. Like, I think this is fucking perfect. Wow. And what an episode this was. Well, Bon's dead, Sua's the enemy, or one of, and Yua has awakened to her power. I don't know, was it ever, like, told to us in some sort of way that Yua was able to see the sword that Ayase was holding? I don't remember. So I don't know if that was like a hint that Well, I knew she would become a gigalomaniac or have a D sword at some point. I'm pretty sure all the female characters at some point, including Nanami, I think is bound to have a D sword. I think she's the only one we have not seen wield a D sword yet. I just think that everybody is bound to have a fucking D sword. So everybody's a gigalomaniac. I just don't know if the game ever fucking told us that, like, hey, yeah, Yua definitely saw ISA's sword and was able to see Senna's as well. Well, I guess Senna real booted it, so there's not really any indication. Alrighty, well, yeah, we'll wrap it up with that one. What a fucking episode. There's a lot that happened here, and yeah, that was very interesting what went down there. It did seem like somebody was truly trying to lead Yua to her death there, and there seems to be some absolute goons working for the bad guys here. But everybody's kind of coming together, so maybe we really are going to have a festival coming up. Thank you all for watching this episode. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz, and I will see you all in the next one. Take it easy.